The whispers surrounding the 2020 presidential election are beginning to get louder and louder and louder with each passing week because presidential prospects, who will most likely be running, are kind of giving us signals that they will soon be announcing their campaigns. And I fully expect most of the people who have already decided that they're going to be running to announce within the first quarter of 2019, because these people are doing things more and more that lead us to believe that they're gearing up already. So, for example, Bernie Sanders held a town hall on climate change, and as Alexander Kaufman of HuffPost puts it, it was powerful enough to kind of give him the edge over all of his other opponents, because he's taking climate change more seriously than anyone else in the 2020 field up until this point. And then you have Kamala Harris anticipating just how ugly the Democratic Party primary will be. And of course, Joe Biden also reminded all of us about just how qualified he is to be president, as if that's something that Americans care about as a reality television star occupies the White House. But nonetheless, regardless of what you think of them, these people are all clearly gearing up. And I think at this point, it's safe to say that there's a number of people that are just guaranteed to be running. Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, of course, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, kind of an open question, but I'm leaning towards she's probably going to run. But someone who was definitely an open question up until this point, who I'd put in the, 50-50 chance of running category, would be Beto O'Rourke. Because during his Senate bid to unseat Ted Cruz, he made it very clear. He explicitly said, I will not be running for president in 2020. But just, I think immediately, like within the next day or so after he lost, he was already changing his tune, talking about how, Amy and I, we're just not going to rule anything out at this point. And now he did something that pretty much confirms to me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that he's definitely running. He kissed the ring of the former Democratic Party president, Barack Obama. This is something that other presidential hopefuls have done, including Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So Beto O'Rourke met with Obama, and that's not necessarily what the story is about. What the story is about is Obama's impression of Beto O'Rourke, because what Obama says specifically about him makes it very clear that we've got to steer clear from Beto, because he really is the white Obama. Even Obama is seeing it. And we've got some footage, I believe, from their meeting.
I don't know what you see, but what I see is me. I see me too. Wow. There really is two of us. There really is two of us.
I don't know why that's what I thought of when I read this article, but nonetheless, here's how their meeting went. Tessa Stewart of Rolling Stone reports, a week and a half after narrowly losing the closely watched Texas Senate race, the soon-to-be ex-congressman from El Paso met with the ex-president at Obama's office in Washington, D.C., the Washington Post reports. Obama must have liked what he heard, because at a live podcast taping 4 days after their November 16th meeting, he told his former strategist, David Axelrod, that O'Rourke was a very impressive young man who reminded him of himself. The reason I was able to make a connection with a sizable portion of the country was because people had a sense that I said what I meant, Obama told Axelrod. What I oftentimes am looking for first and foremost is, do you seem to mean it? Are you in this thing because you have a strong set of convictions that you are willing to risk things for? The former president added, what I liked most about his race was that it didn't feel constantly poll-tested. It felt as if he based his statements and his positions on what he believed, and that you'd like to think is normally how things work. Sadly, it's not. Obama is not the only one who sees the similarities. A week and a half after the reported Obama-O'Rourke summit, Dan Pfeiffer, who served as a senior advisor to Obama, published The Case for Beto O'Rourke on the website of Crooked Media, which was co-founded with 3 other ex-administration officials. Not only does O'Rourke, a friend of the podcast, remind him of his old boss, Pfeiffer wrote that in certain respects, he outshines him. I have never seen a Senate candidate, including Obama in 2004, inspire the sort of enthusiasm that Beto did in his race, Pfeiffer wrote. This is about more than LeBron wearing a Beto hat or Beyonce sporting one on Instagram. It's about the people all over the country with no connection to Texas, with signs in their yards and stickers on their cars. It's about the hundreds of thousands of people across the country who gave small dollar donations because they were inspired by his candidacy and moved by his pledge to not take PAC money. The enthusiasm is real and matters. If Beto were to go to Iowa City next week, I am confident he would draw a crowd 3 times larger than any candidate has since Obama first stumped there. So as I read through this, I'm tempted to bang my fucking head against the desk here. Not really, but it's so frustrating because what he's describing here conveniently ignores something remarkable that happened in 2016. There was another candidate that inspired people across the country, that got them to register and vote for the first time, that got them to send in millions upon millions of dollars in small donations. That person is Bernie Sanders, but they're conveniently ignoring Bernie Sanders. And their silence on Bernie is deafening because it's not as if they're unaware of Bernie Sanders. These are ex-Obama administration officials. They have a political podcast. Odds are they know about Bernie Sanders, but they're choosing to ignore Bernie Sanders and pretend as if all of that momentum we saw was all in our heads. It was just a dream. Beto is the one who's doing what Obama did, not Bernie Sanders. It's beyond frustrating to me, and it makes it clear that all of these pundits are just Democratic Party hacks. They see what they want to see, and they refuse to acknowledge the reality of the situation. There's already a candidate that has enthusiasm, that walks into high schools and is welcomed as if he's a fucking rock star. And that person is Bernie, not Beto. Beto is someone who, while up against Ted Cruz, we all supported, but against Bernie? Obama said, the reason I was able to make a connection with a sizable portion of the country was because people had the sense that I said what I meant. So presumably he thinks that Beto has the sense that he says what he means as well. We have the sense that they're saying what they mean. And certainly, as a young voter voting for the first time, I did have the sense that Obama was saying things that he really felt strongly about. But of course, that wasn't the case. He betrayed all of us. He disappointed an entire generation who voted for the first time and believed in him. Would I have even voted had it not been for Obama? I mean, probably, but it's questionable. I don't know what I would have done back then, but certainly I wasn't as interested in politics, but because of Obama, I got involved because he said something that made sense. He made it seem as if he really wasn't going to do politics as usual. So it doesn't mean anything to me if I get the, quote, sense that someone like Beto O'Rourke means what they say. His actions are what matter to me. And Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk just did a fantastic video explaining why Beto is not the real deal when it comes to progressivism. First of all, he has not co-sponsored H.R. 676, the Medicare for All bill. He has not co-sponsored it. He's refused to co-sponsor that, saying that he doesn't like that bill, but maybe if he would have, won against Ted Cruz, he would have co-sponsored Bernie Sanders' bill, which doesn't even make sense because they're fairly similar. And really, if you want Medicare for all and want it to be effective and the best it could be, H.R. 676 is the gold standard. So to say, oh, well, I like Bernie's bill better, that doesn't really even make sense. The differences aren't large enough, really, to make you not want to support one but the other. I think he was just kind of giving himself an out. Additionally, he voted to deregulate Wall Street. He voted to fast-track the TPP. His actions are what I care about, not what he says anymore, because Obama proved to us that you can't just take a politician at their word. The only person in the 2020 race that has decades of them doing and saying the same thing is Bernard Sanders. Nobody else. So for Obama to say, he kind of sees himself in Beto, that tells me everything I need to know. Because Obama is a very intelligent individual. Do you think he's not privy to the fact that he disappointed his progressive base? He acknowledged that he was essentially governing as a moderate Republican. He acknowledged this. So he is absolutely privy to the fact that we're disappointed in him. He knows about the enthusiasm and momentum surrounding Bernie Sanders, but he sees Beto in himself because he thinks, oh, this is someone who's another bullshitter, who's charismatic, who's going to say one thing and then get in office and do the other thing, who's going to be a neoliberal just like me. Maybe to a lesser extent than Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, but certainly still doing neoliberal policies. So the fact that Obama is excited about Beto O'Rourke and Obama is an establishment figure, that tells me everything that I need to know. But I think it's obvious that Obama's going to back his boy Biden if Biden chooses to run, which I think that is almost certainly going to be the case. But just what he's saying about Beto O'Rourke here, the fact that he seems like he says what he means, and I know that I'm kind of overanalyzing that statement, but I don't give a flying fuck if it seems like you say what you mean and how authentic and genuine you seem. I care about your actions. Beto's actions, they're worrisome. They're absolutely worrisome. And he's not the real deal. Listen, people, we cannot fuck this up. Donald Trump is the president. If he gets 4 more years, think about the negative ramifications of that. How many more Supreme Court seats will he get? Think that is 4 more guaranteed years of not just inaction on climate change, but going backwards. We've got one chance. We can't fuck this up. Bernie is the only person who has the best chance at beating Trump, and we've got to be realistic here. Bernie Sanders, I think, has the best chance, but an incumbent president, Donald Trump, will be more difficult to defeat than 2016 candidate Donald Trump, because incumbent presidents always have that advantage, because voters typically, when they see change, the prospect of change scares them, so they usually go with what they know rather than something that they don't know that could be potentially scary. So we're gonna have to work so hard, even if Bernie Sanders is the nominee. But if he's not, if Democrats put up some corporate Democrat, I think we still have a good chance. But do we have to work harder than we would as if Bernie was the nominee? Definitely. So we need to do what we can to put up the strongest candidate. I'm going to use the same argument that Hillary Clinton supporters made in 2016. If you want to beat the Republicans, you've got to go with the strongest candidate. And I have no doubt in my mind that that person is Bernie Sanders. So if you want to defeat Trump, I suggest you back Bernie Sanders during the primary. Because not only is he the best when it comes to policy, but strategically, he's the Democrats' best bet at defeating Trump in 2020.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.